Welcome to The Favorites, the podcast presented by Bet365. We are part of the Action Network. I am Chad Millman, Chief Content Officer of the Action Network. We are continuing. We're in the final countdown of our division preview series. We're coming down to the end. We have an amazing, brilliant, popular, original guest with us today to talk about the AFC East. I will bring him on in a moment after I bring on my co-host, my BFF, my companion, my compadre, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Chad. Good to be here, my guy. Definitely want to say off the top, thank you to everyone that reached out about life in Maui and donated to Maui. Meant a lot to me, and it's just nice to know that so many fans of our show actually care. So yeah, still in Maui, heading back east next, or I guess this week now, before the season starts. But I would say from where we were at 2 weeks ago to we are now, Chad, life is much better and more calm in Maui. So thank you to everyone that made donations. It really did mean a lot to me and the people of Maui. I mean, they need it right now more than anyone could even imagine. So thanks again to everyone.
You know what I find, Simon? Gamblers, they live by a very different code. I mean this in all seriousness. And they have it in the right place.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it was shocking to know so many people cared, just because at the time we did the show, it was really before the mainstream media kind of got on to what was happening here in Maui. So just seeing how many people just reached out and donated was just incredible. I know our show is kind of big, but I didn't realize how big it really was until I really saw how many people had donated. It was in the thousands. So pretty amazing, all you guys donating. It really was something special.
Speaking of big shows, our guest, who I'm going to bring on in a second, also has a massive, massive betting podcast and a massive, massive Twitter following. He is one of the most popular personalities in gambling, and I'll bring him on in a second. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is proudly favorite sportsbook brand. To get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer, $200 in bonus bets, must be 21 or older. Offer is available in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. As a reminder, starting right now, I'm doing this because I've been told to do it, and I want you to do it. You can catch every episode of The Favorites live on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Action Network YouTube page. Another reminder, I've said it, we're doing a contest. Big prize money coming our way. I'm gonna tease it a little bit more. I will tell everybody how to sign up. It's going to be exciting. We will start doing the podcast Sunday nights live on the first Sunday of the NFL season. Then we're Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday for the rest of the year. Also, one other reminder. Chris Raybon, Stuckey, Brandon Anderson, the whole Action Network podcast team has returned with their full lineup of NFL episodes leading up to week 1. We have our AFC betting previews up now with NFC up next. Lots more good stuff. Folks, and Simon and I were just talking about this yesterday. If you are not reading Brandon Anderson in the Action Network app or on actionnetwork.com, you are missing out. Offensive line rankings. Today or last night, he went up with the best offenses in the NFL. It is so good and so smart. There's a lot of surprises, a lot of really good analysis in there. You know what I'm going to do right now? We're going to talk about the AFC East, which I think might be one of the most hyped and most interesting divisions in football. And it's appropriate to discuss that. We have one of the most interesting men in sports betting media, Warren Sharp. Hello, Warren.
Hey guys, I don't get quite the the voice interjection with when you introduce Simon with the British accent, but I do appreciate the welcome, Chad. It's been a long time, but enjoy, all of your guys' content over there at the Action Network. And certainly you guys have a great podcast. So happy to talk to you guys about the AFC South.
Dude, it's the AFC East. I think I screwed you up because when we came on,
you did the NFC
South. What's that?
You tricked us with the NFC South.
I did.
Then
I came on and I tried
South. But
you're making a joke. He's making a joke.
Yeah, I went right over your head.
Went right over my head. Man, I hope Matt Mitchell is freaking out somewhere behind the scenes. Listen, look, Warren's great, and if you have not checked out Warren's sharp football analysis NFL preview book, which Simon and I have talked about with Rich Rebar, who is a contributor to Sharp Football Analysis, which is Warren's website. He's a contributor to the book. Warren also does a betting podcast on The Ringer, which is fantastic. He does it with House, who I love. But Warren, we had Rich on. We talked about the book. Give people a little bit of background about how long you've been doing this book, because it is as comprehensive a preview book as there is for the NFL. It has blown all the other preview books out of the water.
No, I appreciate that. I really started turning into it probably like 5 years ago, I would say, when I got my hands on more of the play-by-play data, and I really was trying to uncover different ways to attack the league that wasn't being talked about enough, in my opinion. Now it's ballooned. I mean, it's like 532 pages right now. This thing is like a phone book, literally. But we break down all 32 teams. There's stuff for fantasy, there's stuff for betting, and basically what I try to do is give you a quick way to process why this team had its record that they did last year, because I am a firm believer in that the Bill Parcellsism, you are what your record says you are, is complete wrong, and that there's a lot of reasons why a team might have had a record they did. We have to uncover the real backbone of what this team is. Then what pieces did they lose? Coaches, players. What pieces did they gain? Coaches, players between last year and this year, and then try to come up with what the projections are for them for this upcoming season. And so right now, I know that some people listening might say 532 pages. How am I going to digest this? There's 2 weeks till the start of the season. Well, for that reason, for only $4.99, you can get it now at the website. Just go to sharp.football and use the code ACTION. Just for you guys and your podcast. Anybody wants to get it, you can get it for less than $5. It's a great way to spend a couple bucks before the season starts.
Couldn't agree more. I love that we're ripping legendary coaches. We're pimping football previews. I mean, we are going full bore on the pot. We're making Matt Mitchell nervous. His head is sweating in a basement in Milwaukee right now. That's all you need to know. When Rich was on, Warren, a few weeks ago, we talked about the stat that you've sort of created, and that speaks to the strength of schedule as it relates to rest for your opponents and yourself, and preparation for your opponents and for yourself. Explain how you came up with that stat, because today, while we've got you on the podcast, as we've been going through these previews, Simon and I, we've talked about strength of schedule. We've talked about the components of a team we think are most important as we're trying to lay out where we think the best opportunities for betting are. This is something very specific, and I'm going to ask Simon sort of how he thinks about this, because I know he was impressed by it. How did you come up with this stat? Explain to people what it is.
Well, there's a big difference between the strength of schedule, which is what the league gives you. Most of it's known well in advance because they rotate divisions and we know what the game plan is years ahead. A couple games are based upon where you finished last year, and we know who you're going to play, the moment the last second ticks off the clock, week 18. But what we don't know is when you're going to play those teams. And that is a big factor. And we don't know that until mid-May when the NFL rolls out their schedule. And the difference between what they do there in mid-May and what we know after week 18 is that week 18, after that ends, the NFL can't control who you're going to play. But the NFL has complete control over when you're going to play these teams. And more importantly, beyond just when, it's how much rest advantage do you have, or how much rest advantage does your opponent have? And they're big factors, especially later on in the season. And I started diving into this a little bit because I realized that I look for areas that I don't think enough discussion is occurring with regard to those, and I try to capitalize on that to look for value. And what I uncovered is that there is a meaningful value both in ATS, particularly later on in the season, as well as season win totals based upon your rest disparity versus your opponents and the accumulation of that over the course of the season. So, for example, you play a game on a Thursday night, your opponent plays a game on a Monday night. You are going to have an edge there of several days to get ready for your next game, whether that's on a Sunday or, the next Monday night. In either case, you've got an edge. Some cases, your opponent might have a disadvantage less than a week, and now your edge is even more pronounced. Some cases, the NFL schedules your opponent to have a bye week the same time as your bye week. So while you don't have a disadvantage, you don't gain the edge that you might have otherwise had by having that bye week and that extra time to rest and prepare for your opponent. And so I've dug into that. It takes a couple of days, really, maybe like a full night to really process the information as soon as the schedule is announced. And then I write an article, and then I start using it actually to bet some of the games, because the odds makers come out with their, weeks 2 to 18 lines, like the very next day, as quickly as they possibly can get them out, because it's obviously profitable to get those numbers out, to get people into your book, open up accounts and start betting. But there's no way possible that they're factoring in some of these rest edges. And I can just tell you, since 2015, teams with 3 or more day rest advantage after week 13 have won 55% of their games, covered ATS 55.7. That's over 100 game sample. So we're not talking like just 20 games here or 30 games here. We are talking 100 games. It's not as meaningful as 1,000 games, but it still is important to look at and factor in. And 55.7, as Simon will tell you, is a really good rate if you're doing nothing and factoring nothing in but rest. And by the time you get to the start of those games, rest is understood. But weeks out, months out in advance, the odds makers aren't really calculating or factoring in rest. And so I think it's important to understand that and use it as a factor. I would never advocate just taking this 55.7, even though it's a good percentage and you can, make money, solid money, just betting nothing but that. I would never really advocate doing nothing, no handicapping at all, but betting rest or but betting strength of schedule. But it's absolutely something that you should be factoring into your calculus. And in the book, every single team, I list out their schedule and how many days of a rest advantage they have over their opponent. And then I also show cumulative, over the entire season.
Simon, what impressed you about this that went to a level you hadn't seen before?
I would say, especially when it came onto the market a couple of years ago, it was one of those where it's like, people don't understand how big of a deal it is that these teams have mini bye weeks later in the season compared to other teams they're playing against. Like, to me, that's a huge deal where all these players talk about it. Everyone's beat up, especially after week 10, week 11. Everyone's got injuries. Those little mini bye weeks are a big deal, especially when you're betting teams' futures, long-term bets. So I look at all that stuff, especially certain teams that, a good example is the Jets. The Jets have been a dumpster fire ever since Sanchez and the Rex Ryan era. So they have not been in primetime games. Now, if you look at their schedule, I think they have 4 or 5 primetime games this upcoming season. That's a big deal, right? That means they have shorter weeks, especially if they're playing on a Sunday night or a Monday night compared to the teams they're playing against those upcoming weeks. So, Warren was definitely ahead of the market in this sense. And I think he talked about it where you just don't want to blindly just bet it, because the books are eventually going to catch up to some of this stuff, right? They have this information we have that Warren's nice enough to give to us, where the books are going to use that stuff and they're going to use it against the public. That's just what they do. So to me, it's I feel like he nailed it, where it's not the end all be all, right? It's not, you're just not going to blindly bet this one statistic, but when you're using a bunch of different stuff, it's a great tool to use. And that's why, when people ask me about it, I always say I love, especially when the book comes out, I love looking at the different teams and how it's set up for them schedule wise, because it sounds crazy, but it's a huge edge. Where last year, we were all over the Eagles, Chad. How long did we talk about Eagles being the number 1 seed, being the best in the NFC. If you go back and you look, Warren was on it ahead of time about their scheduling. They had an easy schedule because they're playing so many inexperienced quarterbacks, and they had good rest disparity where they're playing teams that, they weren't coming off byes. Where this year, I think the Eagles have a run where they play 5 teams coming off a bye. It's something crazy like that, where that doesn't sound like that's that big of a deal, but it is when you're giving these coaches an extra week to prepare for this offense. So again, it's not the end all be all stat, but it is something I'm obsessive looking at just because it's a big deal when you factor into the season long odd betting. That's stuff we'd like to bet on.
All right, well, listen, we're going to talk about it today with the AFC East, assuming that's the conference we're doing or the division we're doing. And we're probably going to, we're going to talk about it going forward. I think it's a fascinating stat. Let me remind you, Simon and Warren, 9, this is from Evan Abrams, our senior researcher, our head of research, crack researcher. 9 of the last 10 Super Bowl champions have been listed at plus 1,200 or shorter to win it all in the preseason. So 12-1 or less, right? This year, right now, there is a team from the AFC East that is listed at 12-1 or less. That is the Buffalo Bills. They're plus 850, so 8.5 to 1 at Bet365. For the record, and this is an example of overhype, knocking on the door, the New York Jets at 14-1. We're going to get into all these teams, people, all of these teams. I think we got to start with the Buffalo Bills. Let's start at number 1, right? So right now, their win total is 10.5. The over is minus 150. They're plus 120 to win the division. As I said, they're plus 850 to win the Super Bowl. Per Sean Kerner. So in the same way that Warren takes a different look at strength of schedule, Sean Kerner, who I've been referencing for his strength of schedule stats in all the preview podcasts, has the Bills as having the 6th hardest schedule. And I will say he has the AFC East as having the hardest schedule in the NFL. And Sean also does this dynamically. Like, he is updating it based on rosters. It is not a set it and forget it by what we see in May. It is changing dynamically. Warren, I'll start with you. Anything appetizing to you? 10.5, over, under, plus 120 to win the division, plus 850 to win the Super Bowl. Is there anything there that is appetizing to you?
Well, quite simply, no, but I wanted to fade the Bills. I really came into the season trying to find a reason to fade the Bills this year. And I know Matt Mitchell's not going to like hearing that, but because I know he's a big Buffalo Bills fan. Last year, I advocated not betting the Bills before the season and jumping on them later. This year, if you are going to bet them, you probably do want to bet them earlier because their schedule is a little bit more difficult down the stretch. But I could not, Chad, find any value in going under 10.5 because I don't like the worst case scenario. And if you say, if your quarterback gets injured, and we know how much Josh Allen means to this team, like, I don't like playing that game because then you might as well play it for all 32 teams. So I'm trying not to say if your quarterback gets injured. There's not really any scenario that I can see where the Bills are winning fewer than 9 games this year. And this is still an elite team. It's still a sound team, and they're only at 10.5. And so I don't see enough value going under, but they do, as you kind of alluded to, play a ridiculously difficult schedule, especially down the stretch. And when we look back and look at what they did last year and all those wins they rattled off late in the season, off of the Skylar Thompsons and the Mac Jones and the Jacoby Brissetts and the Joe Flaccos and the, Justin Fields, like all those wins, you're now going up against a brutal schedule this year where from week 9 onward, you're playing Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert. And then you do have your Mac Jones, a game against Tua and a game against Russ. It's just a much more difficult schedule. I'm just a little leery about McDermott, but I'll toss it back to you. From a value perspective, I don't see a lot for the Bills.
Simon?
Yeah, I was there with Warren last year. I faded the Bills in every way I could because I couldn't get over the fact that they were the number 1 team, right, to be the Super Bowl favorite. Like, that would, to me, was last season was the definition of an overreaction to the previous season, right? They had gone down to the clock with the Chiefs. The public just loved that team. And did I know how big of a deal it was going to be that Brian had left him to go to the Giants, Dabo, to be the head coach? No, I knew how good of an offensive coordinator he was. But a lot of pros I've talked to this season, Chad, that's why they're still not all in on the Bills. I just think that was such a big loss to this team that this man is an offensive genius. I mean, we've seen it like this. The Giants look like they have a new identity, right? We saw them really take huge strides last year with not that much talent. This Bills team last year, to me, seemed like they had a season from hell, and they still were able to win this division, right? Gabe Davis rolled his ankle. What was that, week one of their star receivers. Josh Allen injured his elbow midway through the season. He played through that injury the entire season. You could see, too, his throwing mechanic was totally different after that point of injuring his elbow. So, to me, this is a team that I was all about fading last year, and this year I'm just on them. Like, I love the Bills in the sense of I don't know if it's going to get much better than this season, right? They're going to have their biggest issue right now, for sure, to any professional you talk to, is that offensive line. That is truly an issue. But when you have a runner and a strong QB like Josh Allen, it negates that. And on the outside, they still have Diggs. They still have Gabe Davis. Now they have Cook in the backfield. Now they have a rookie tight end that we all think is going to be a stud. It's just all there for this Bills team. So I was completely in negative off the bandwagon last year for the Bills. This year I'm on them. Like they're a team I love. I love teams just like the Chiefs last year. I love a team in a really tough division that's going to really push them to be playoff ready all season, right? Like at the end of the year, I like that they have so many tough games because it feels like they're going to be in playoff mode. Except last year they sleptwalked through that final month of the season and they got caught in the playoffs. I mean, they literally almost lost to Miami at home with a backup quarterback. Like there were major issues last year for this Bills team, and I think this year they're going to overcome a lot of that. So I'm with Warren. It's not great value on the Super Bowl future. You could throw a little on it. If you're getting plus 900, you're getting plus 850. I don't hate it. If you want to roll the dice and maybe think they might get upset week one by the Jets, you can hold off on that bet. But I did bet their win total over 10.5 is just too low. Like that to me is an overreaction to the Rodgers being in their division, right? To Miami being a little bit better than what people thought they were last year. I think that the public always likes the new toy, Chad, right? That's just how the public is. They always like the new thing that's coming along. The Bills aren't that anymore. To a lot of people, they're like, well, we've liked the Bills. We've always given them like the Super Bowl betting favorites the last 3 years, and they just never live up to the hype. They either choke or they let down the playoffs. And to me, I want to come back on the other side now. So I do think if you're a Bills fan, it's lined up for this year. Like you just have so much talent across that offense and the D-line. I mean, I don't know when Von Miller's going to be back, but when he is back, that's a huge upgrade to that D-line position. So, yeah, to me, Chad, I did the over 10.5. I threw a really small bet on the division. We'll talk about my favorite bet for the division, this division, but 10.5 to me, that's a nice price. So minus 150, minus 140, whatever you can get at the book, I would take that. Like to me, I got them at 11.6 wins. So I got them a full win above what they're being projected right now by the books. That's a really nice number. So for me, that's the bet I'm making right now is taking their over win total.
So I was doing some research. I've been doing a lot of research for these podcasts, Simon. And Matt Mitchell is coming after me right now because he said I can't look down the whole time because this is also on YouTube and it's live on YouTube. But I got 6 pages of notes in front of me in a very cramped phone booth, and I'm trying to look at them at the same time that I'm trying to do the podcast. My notes tell me that Brandon Anderson has the Bills as the second best offense in the NFL because Josh Allen returns, because they're a year removed from your point, Simon, Brian Daboll, and I think that they were impacted by that. So now they've got a year to get their head straight. They've added Damian Harris as a good number 2 option, more of a power running back. Offensive line, middling, 22nd, according to Brandon. We're going to talk deeper in the offensive lines with Ross Tucker on Thursday. Number 7 ranked defensive line, according to PFF, because of potential for Von Miller to come back. I think I'm making the Bills-Niners my Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah.
Warren is shaking his head. Warren likes
it. Look, there's a couple things that I want to add here. First of all, there were some improvements with Dorsey that weren't there with Daboll, but I completely mirror Simon's opinion about Brian Daboll. one of my favorite play callers, one of the most dynamic. He's able to change his game plan on a week-to-week basis to attack his opponents. He really focuses in, understands what wins and loses games in the NFL, and tries to stick with what wins. But last year, one of the great things about this rushing attack was they had 2.9 yards before contact per running back run on first down. That was by far the best in the NFL. And I think James Cook there, a plus, Damian Harris there, a plus. But the one cool thing about Dorsey was that he did not overuse that. He could have leaned more into it, seeing what they were getting out of it, but instead they still stayed very pass heavy. So that bodes well for this upcoming season in that, hey, maybe we're going to still be able to run the ball. What that will do is if we don't get bypassing a third down, we're still going to have a third and manageable if you're productive on those first two downs. And so for that reason, I think that was a positive. Their run defense, speaking of sticking on the ground with the trenches, which is, I know, something Simon likes, the run defense last year was terrible. It's hard for them to get worse than what they were last year. They allowed, between the tackles, 5.1 yards per carry. That was 31st in the NFL. They allowed 16% of runs to gain 10 plus yards. That was dead last in the NFL. They bring in Poona Ford. Hopefully they're going to be able to get more out of this ground game on defensively to prevent teams from just running up the gut on them quite as frequently this upcoming season. But if you look at this team, I really value early down efficiency metrics. And this team last year in so many of their games, even without Daboll there calling the shots, was just so elite in early downs and had the advantage in games in early downs against their opponents. So they're going to just have to continue doing that. And then the last thing, I wrote an article on my website. I'm going back to my roots, Chad. When you and I were first getting together, I used to write a lot about analytics and data. And then I got away from that the last couple of years. I've been writing more about betting on, various other platforms. I'm going back to Sharp Football Analysis this year, and I'm writing on my site, and I'm writing about whatever I want to. And so I wrote a detailed article about the thing that differentiates the Bills from the Chiefs as you're picking the Bills to make it to the Super Bowl this year, more than anything, because these are the top two offenses in the NFL by far the last several years. Number one and number two in literally every single statistical metric that matters, except for down near the goal line, where it might shock you as it did me. The Buffalo Bills have the worst offense in the NFL down inside the 3-yard line, down at the goal line. The worst, like not just 28th, like literally dead last. And in part, it's because of the play designs that they use. And so it's just so different between the play designs that they've been using, especially under Dorsey, with what like Andy Reid was using with Patrick Mahomes. Two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but they get the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands so quickly. And one of the biggest things down at the goal line is just complete the pass. Because if you complete a pass down near the goal line, your odds of scoring are very high. And with the Buffalo Bills, all of these designs are like Josh Allen holding the ball for among the league's highest rate. And the completion rate is one of the worst in the NFL, like 38% completion rate, because they're holding onto the ball too much. If Dorsey's able to fix that and they improve down inside the goal line when they get there, I mean, that's exactly the next step this team needs to take to maybe eventually knock off the Kansas City Chiefs and make it to their first Super Bowl in ages.
By the way, when you and I first started working together, you mean when I discovered you and pulled you from the scrap heap of being an expert witness for engineering and gave you a platform to write about analytics when it comes to over-unders? Yeah, that was like 13 years ago.
Yeah. That was a great day. I really appreciate you for that. Being outside of my engineering profession is the best thing that's happened to me. That was not as fun as what I get to do right now. So.
All right, listen.
Thank you.
I'm just here to help. The Miami Dolphins. Simon and Matt Mitchell hate me. Miami Dolphins. Look, I love the Dolphins. Wins. The over is minus 110, plus 300 to win the division. I think they're a sleeper for the Super Bowl at 22-1. Love the coach. Love the talent at receiver. I think there's some questions about Tua, but that is a question more than like the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, which we'll get to. He's an if factor with a ceiling that makes this team so much higher than I think just about any other team. They, to me, are one of the more exciting teams. Simon, any best bets coming from the Dolphins right now?
Yeah, I'm fading the Dolphins, Chad. I know. It feels like everyone in media is all over the Dolphins. They're the darling team of everyone. And it's just the year 2 for Mike McDaniels. I think that his offense snuck up on a lot of people last year. I think a lot of defense will be prepared for it this year. And I know you're saying where it's really hard to prepare for the speed of Tyreek Hill and Waddle. I know a lot of people think that's what all their offense was, but a lot of it was run blocking. That's how they open up so many of these lanes. And it really seemed like that 49ers game was a turning point for this, where a lot of defenses figured out this offense, where they realized that Tua loved the middle of the field, right? That was kind of his sweet spot, where they would have a lot of crossers, a lot of stuff worked out where these guys would be in the middle of the field. The 49ers took that away, and a lot of teams copycatted that towards the end of the year. So to me, this Miami team is highly talented. I mean, they brought in arguably one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football to coach this defense. And yeah, the Ramsey injury is brutal. I know there's a lot of rumors that he'll be back by December after rehab, which would be huge for this defense. I mean, he's arguably one of the best corners on football. But to me, this Miami team, I just see them taking a step back. Like Tua, if you look at all the numbers from last year, Tua was statistically the best quarterback in football. I know it sounds crazy to people. If you go look at the numbers, his accuracy was incredible. He made almost always the smart read, right? If there's 3 options for him to pass to, and whatever option he chose was usually the perfect option to choose. Like, it was just an incredible season for him, and the only thing held them back was the concussions. I mean, me and you, we had large bets on Miami last year to win this division. Like, we thought they were going to be the team that was going to sneak up on people. That's gone. They're no longer that offense. They're no longer sneaking up on anybody. I think teams are prepared for them. Then you look at their schedule. It's tough, Chad. So I've actually taken their under. I have them at 9 wins. So I've taken the under small. Nothing for them divisionally. Nothing for them Super Bowl. The only bet I really made on this team is Tyreek Hill, once again, to lead the league in receiving yards, just because the man himself has said his goal is 2,000 yards. How am I not going to bet on that? Like, anytime a pro comes out and says that, he knows he's going to be in it to his ear when he's not getting his touches. And I like that kind of stuff for a wide receiver. So, yeah, my only real positive bet for this team is Tyreek Hill to lead the league in receiving yards.
Warren, quickly tell me, and then let's do the same thing for Miami. Where do you stack Buffalo in terms of strength of schedule for rest and prep as a positive or negative? Because I forgot to have you discuss that with the Bills, and then talk about it for Miami as well.
Yeah, so the Buffalo Bills are one of the more difficult schedules in the NFL as it relates to rest and prep. They are a dead neutral on like their net rest edge. But one thing that's going to separate both of these teams from the New York Jets as it relates to betting the division is I'll get to when we talk about the New York Jets, because it's a fascinating angle. With the Miami Dolphins, I don't disagree with Simon. They aren't sneaking up on anybody, but they do have one of the better rest edges in the NFL this year. They're at +7 overall. And that is like 6th best, 7th best in the NFL, I think tied for 7th best. So they have an advantage over the Buffalo Bills, as do the New York Jets, who have a decided advantage over the Buffalo Bills in that respect.
According to Sean Kerner, the Miami Dolphins have the hardest schedule in the NFL. So, Warren, do you agree with Simon on the under? Do you find any value in Miami to win the division? What's your betting take on this team?
Yeah, this one was very difficult because I'm so split. You know, when the Dolphins had Tua, as you mentioned, they were 8-3. They were 1-6 in all the other games. You know, Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle were only there and only available when Tua was there. I mean, they had 15 touchdowns with Tua in the lineup, 0 touchdowns in their 73 targets when Tua was not there. Then the other thing that really is a positive if you're thinking about them this upcoming season is that not much went their way last season. 6-5 in 1-score games, so we're talking basically about a coin flip. 4th worst turnover margin at -7. The worst penalty margin in the NFL at -27. They ranked 25th in fumble luck and 23rd in field goal luck. They had one of the worst injury lucks as well, and they played a difficult schedule. So from all those things, you're like starting to think, okay, maybe there's going to be a little bit of regression. Maybe we're going to get back on the right track with some of these. And at least improve to league average, maybe a little bit better than league average. And then you talk about Vic Fangio coming on board. And the Dolphins last year were absolutely terrible defensively in two key metrics that really impacted their defense a lot. And these are high leverage situations. Red zone and third down, where they ranked 24th in each of those metrics. So we're talking 9th worst in the NFL in both. Because they were so bad on third downs, they allowed 32% of opponents' drives to reach the red zone. That was the 6th highest rate in the league. So I do think that Fangio, I'm obviously disappointed that Jalen Ramsey's not going to be there. And honestly, I was waiting and biding my time for a moment that I thought maybe the Dolphins would be a good time to back these guys. But I think the Ramsey situation might have been the final nail in the coffin for me. I don't know that I believe the timeline of when he's going to be back, number one. And number two, I just don't have enough confidence that all of these things are going to go their way. The reason I wanted to try to back the Dolphins a little bit is for a reason I think Simon alluded to earlier, which is that the Jets are the darlings right now, and there's no value on the Jets. Everybody wants to bet on the Jets. And so is there another team in this division that you could look at? Like you guys, although I didn't do it for a division, I was on their win total over last year, and it wasn't until the very last game of the season that I ended up getting it. I thought that thing was gone and toast, even though we should have gotten it with ease because of the Tua injuries. I think he's going to be healthier this year. I think he is better, but I do have the concerns that Simon alluded to. The opposing coordinators now have some blueprints to work off of. And this is an interesting stat that I think is one thing that teams started to take away from them a little bit last year. That's a factor. This team was excellent down the middle of the field, both passing and running the football. When passing between the numbers, Tua was the best in EPA per attempt. When passing outside the numbers, he ranks 22nd. When they ran between the tackles, they ranked third best. But when they ran outside the tackles, they ranked 28th out of 32 teams. So this team was so much like down the middle of the field, passing, running, taking advantage of the lighter boxes, two eye safeties, the linebackers being a little bit worse league-wide. And I think now opponents can basically understand what they were trying to attack and have some success. I am curious, though, last point, we know Kyle Shanahan. His system is very solid, but he's really only had success with Jimmy G. But he's had a lot of success with Jimmy G. I wonder with Mike McDaniel, as long as he's got Tua there, like this system could be successful and always keep them competitive. And I know their ceiling, their best case scenario could be, to take a playoff trip and to do well. But I think the path is too difficult. I don't want to have any involvement at this point in the futures market with this team.
When I said that I loved the Dolphins and was excited about their ceiling, I was doing what good hosts do, which is really just trying to set you guys up to create a little bit of tension and a counterpoint. And clearly I did that really, really well. I'm excited for Tua also because he's got that cool new sleeve of a tattoo. And I think it's impressive he put it on his non-throwing hand just so his arm doesn't get bogged down by the weight.
There you go.
I want to see if the camera that they stuck on all of his practice footage is doing anything that is helping Mike McDaniel get them even better. I like the Dolphins. Like I was already on them last year. I don't see enough value. I'm rooting for them. I think that this is a fun team to watch when they're hitting. And I hope that Tua stays healthy because he makes the NFL better because this offense is more exciting. So, but I just don't see enough value to want to jump on them in the futures market to play on them.
They are on the road this year against the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chargers. And they also have home games against the Cowboys and the Giants, which is, one of the reasons. They will also obviously have to play the Bills, and they will also have to play the Jets, and they will also have to play the Patriots. Simon, it's not going to be an easy road. I can see why you're anti-Dolphins right now. Now I'm coming around and seeing it. I was blinded by Tua's brilliance and Mike McDaniel's charm, but now I'm seeing it.
Yeah, last year was, I mean, the reason we love them. If Tua would have stayed healthy, I do think they would have won this division last year. It was like all set up where we knew Mac Jones was gonna have a down year. We knew Chad. We were all over the Jets just being shit with Zach Wilson. So we don't have that fortuity this year. Like the Jets will be better. The Patriots, when we're gonna get to them, they're going to be better.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where I know people are like, well, Tua did the jiu-jitsu and now he knows how to fall. Their O-line still has major issues, and I am literally worried for this man's health whenever they do play the Jets. Like the Jets have 8 guys up front that can kill Tua. So to me, that's going to be the big watermark where we know, okay, did the jiu-jitsu actually work for Tua when he's going to be getting hit? I mean, I'm just guessing here, but he's probably going to be touched 10 to 15 times anytime he drops back against this Jets D-line.
And you were right on, Simon. Just one last point, Chad. When they went out to San Francisco and played the 49ers and some of the defensive adjustments that then the Chargers the very next week copycatted, and they put up only 17 points in both of those games, we'll know right off the bat if Mike McDaniel has a counter move to that, because they play the Chargers week 1. And the Chargers and Brandon Staley are going to try to implement some of those same things and take away the middle of the field and force Tua to throw the ball outside the numbers. And so we'll know pretty quickly if there is a counterpoint for them or if it's going to be a long season.
All right. Everybody who listens to the podcast knows what time it is. It is time to talk about Game Time, the fastest growing ticketing app in the United States. I love Game Time. Honestly, I use it all the time. And if you're looking to get out to a pro or college game this week or even a concert, Game Time has amazing last-minute deals or tickets to all of these. I am opening the Game Time app right now from my office here in New York City. You know what I see? I see Yankees tickets. I can get Yankees game tonight for $6. It's going to be a beautiful night in the Bronx, even though the Yankees are playing. $6, no matter where you live. Download the Game Time app. Get out and have some fun this week. You deserve it. And you can redeem code FAVORITES for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just download the app and enter code FAVORITES for $20 off. Download. Comes to the AFC East. 9.5 wins is the total. Minus 125 is the price to pay if you want to bet the over. Plus 240 to win the division. As I said, 14-1 to win the Super Bowl at Bet365, just outside that 12-1 threshold where 9 of the past 10 Super Bowl champs have been 12-1 or lower. Who knows? They may get there before the season starts. Simon, the Jets have the hardest schedule, according to Sean Kerner. They get the Chiefs, the Eagles, and Chargers at home. Their toughest non-divisional road game will be at the Cowboys. I want to hear what Warren has to say about their rest and their prep advantages or disadvantages. But Simon, first, set me up. We know we love this D-line, but are we buying?
Yeah, just an incredible defense. I mean, everyone knows that. Anyone that watched them last year knows how good this defense is. And they brought in the missing piece. It's Aaron Rodgers. Like, to me, that's a huge deal to a fan base that they've never had a good quarterback. Even when you go back all the way to when they won their Super Bowl, statistically, they've never had a quarterback anywhere close to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers last season, his worst season, you could say statistically, would be an all-time season for a Jets quarterback. That's how bad their quarterback play has been, their franchise history. So the hype, I get why their fans should be excited. It's an exciting thing. If you don't know much about football and you're just a Jets fan, you should be really excited. But anybody would tell you that's a smart bettor that looks at these kind of numbers. They have major issues across the board, and it all starts up front. Their offensive line is terrible. So you have a bad offensive line with an aged quarterback. Huge red flag. And I love that he gave him the money. It was a little too late, right? They should have done that. They should have worked out the deal around the draft, got him in camp, got that money, and went out and got him another offensive lineman that could help protect him, because they didn't address their big issue. They have a bad offensive line, and, you know, no one's going to be shocked, Chad, when we're through 6 weeks and they're 2-4. When you just look at their schedule on paper, no one's going to be shocked if they're 2-4. And that, to me, is when, if I want to take the Super Bowl futures, if I want to take them to win this division, that's when I'll come back in on this team. But as we sit here right now, no-brainer bet, I'll take the under, and I will stay far hell away from them Super Bowl future. It's just who the hell are they to be higher of than the Ravens? They have better odds right now than the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl. That's asinine. In what world should they be better odds than the Ravens? The Ravens are more talented than they are across the board. So, to me, this is a team that the public will just love. We knew the public would love them coming in just because there's so many Jets fans that are just desperate for a winner. And then you throw in their own Hard Knocks. That eats away at the value right there. So, to me, this will be the most public team heading into the season. I've talked to multiple bookmakers in Jersey. I talked to multiple bookmakers in Vegas when I was there. Jets money. They keep getting Jets money, and that's what they keep talking about. And what do you always say, Chad? That's the dream for Vegas. Like, they love when the public pounds on these teams that are unproven. So, to me, the Jets, I'll get in them later in the season and next year. I love them next year as well. Like, to look ahead, I think they'll address the offensive line this offseason, and then next year will be when I'm on this Jets team for the upcoming season. But this year, I can't get enough of fading them. So I am staunchly on their under right now. I got them at 8.5 wins for this season. That's a full game under the 9.5. I love the value on this team taking their under.
First of all, when you started talking, you sounded enthusiastic about the Jets. And in my head, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because we have talked about FADE, the JETS, since they signed Aaron Rodgers and the hype train started and they became this team that was taking all this money. We love fading the Jets, to your point. So you freaked me out a little bit there for a second. I'm like, am I in Wonderland? What is going on?
I'm just saying Jets fans should be excited. That was my whole point at the very beginning.
Yeah, well, you kind of freaked me out for a minute. So the first 6 games of the year, to your point about they could potentially be 2-4. They host the Bills. They're at the Cowboys. They host the Patriots. They host the Chiefs. They're at the Broncos. They host the Eagles. Those are
that's brutal.
That is brutal. 3 of those teams are in that lower than 12-1 Super Bowl threshold with the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Bills. Okay. And the Patriots are going to be much, much better. We're going to get to that. So great.
And that Cowboys D line versus offensive line, it's just bad matchups for this team.
Brandon Anderson, who is sort of aggregating offensive line rankings from PFF and a variety of other places, has the Jets as the number 23rd offensive line in the NFL. Warren, are you fading the Jets as strongly as Simon and I are?
Well, the time that I would want to fade the Jets is, so Aaron Rodgers is going to start this next game. We're going to see some more Hard Knocks. Once that series is over, that's when I think everybody, that money's going to, as Simon said, is continuing to flow. It's going to continue after Aaron Rodgers' game in the preseason. He hasn't played yet. We've just seen the Zach Wilson show, which has been, Zach Wilson-esque. But we're going to see Aaron Rodgers soon, and then we're going to see this market continue to rise. I would be looking, if you're looking to fade this team, I think Simon's onto something. The time that I would do it is right before the start of the season, when that value is at its peak, and also potentially bet on the Buffalo Bills in week 1. And then you can come back and buy the New York Jets after those first 6 games. I show that in addition to them having a difficult, a tough offensive line, like their offensive line is one of their weak spots, they play the number 1 toughest schedule those first 6 weeks in opponent pass rush. And I mean, I'm circling that week 2 game against the Dallas Cowboys, like Simon mentioned, as a complete mismatch in pass rush versus offensive line. I'll talk about rest in a second because I know you want to hit that, but I do want to make sure that I include the fact that Aaron Rodgers was a very different quarterback last year. I don't know if this was age, lack of comfort with his receiving core, what have you, than he was in prior years, because 35% of his attempts came at or behind the line of scrimmage in terms of depth of target. That was the highest of any quarterback in the NFL. He was not throwing the ball down the field nearly as much. It was all this, get the ball out of my hands quickly. I think he was into self-preservation mode at points in time where he did not want to take those hits. He wanted to get the ball out quickly. It was the highest rate in his career, is the highest of any quarterback in the NFL last year. So I'm interested to see, how this factors into this upcoming season, potentially behind an offensive line that's struggling. Because if you look at Zach Wilson was actually very good when he was getting rid of the ball quickly. I was surprised to see, wrote about in the book, number 9 in efficiency when throwing the ball in less than 2.5 seconds last year. But He had the NFL's third highest rate of attempts that came when he held onto the ball for 4+ seconds, and the NFL's highest rate of attempts that came when he held onto the ball for 5+ seconds. All Zach Wilson's game is, you saw it on that one clip that was tweeted out like a couple of days ago. He just loves standing there, surveying the field, running around and like a chicken with his head cut off, and then just trying to make something happen crazy at the last second of the play. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. And that's what he was doing. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to do that. He's going to get rid of the ball much quicker. But the question is he going to be looking for those dump offs just to be in preservation mode, or is he actually going to push the ball down the field, something he wasn't doing last year?
Yeah, this team, I cannot wait to fade this team. Warren, where's your strength of schedule with regard to prep and rest?
Yeah, like I've talked about this on Twitter, and some of the Jets fans don't like me, but it's just a fact. It's just data. I can't really like change it. But the NFL, when they came out with their schedule, it's clear they want this team in the playoffs. They want this team to be good enough to be hosting playoff games. And I say that because of all the edges that they've baked in. Their schedule is tough of opponents. Their schedule is the easiest in franchise history in terms of rest advantage that they have over their opponents. It's number one in the NFL this year. It's the best in New York Jets franchise history. And the other thing, as it relates to, how do you punch a ticket the easiest way possible? You guys both know this. It's winning your division. And the NFL schedule makers gave the Jets this decided advantage when rest is of its utmost importance, and that's late in the season. The Jets play 4 divisional games late in the season, and they have a rest advantage in all 4 of those games. Let's go over it. Week 11, they get to play the Bills. After the Bills play Monday Night Football, the Bills are on a day less rest, short week. Week 15, they take on the Dolphins. The Dolphins play Monday Night Football, short week for them. Week 18, they take on the Patriots. The Jets play Thursday night. They have extra rest to play the New England Patriots. And then this other interesting quirk, and that is that the NFL scheduled their first Black Friday game ever. And lo and behold, who's going to be on that Black Friday game? Of course, it's the New York Jets hosting at home, which means the team that they're playing has to play on a short week and travel on the road. And who's that going to be? The Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins twice, plus a game against the Bills, plus a game against the Patriots from week 11 onward. The Jets have decided rest advantages down the stretch, which is bothersome if you're looking to, fade this team in the division. It's just something to be aware of late in the year. But there's no doubt about it. They have such a great rest schedule, but such a difficult schedule of opponents. It's going to be interesting to see those two juxtaposed against each other.
Simon, you know what I love about that? I feel like you and I are at the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to NFL conspiracies, whereas I am anti-conspiracy and think everything is a coincidence and it's all left up to what's happening on the field. And I think you are all in on NFL league offices pulling the strings on every single detail. And so what Warren did there, which was very clever, he said people at Twitter are coming after him because he's just stating the facts, but the facts are leading to a very specific conclusion that may or may not be factual. Are you buying what Warren is selling about the NFL creating an easier path via rest and scheduling for the Jets? I think you're buying that particular conspiracy theory.
Why would a billion-dollar business want their New York offices to have a good year? It doesn't make sense. Now, yeah, of course I believe all that stuff. I'm a very, very, very biased towards the Northeast, Chad. You know this, living in the Northeast. I just think the NFL caters towards the Northeast in a lot of different ways.
I love that. We're all going to fade the New York Jets at under 9.5. Simon, your enthusiasm made it sound like it might be one of your favorite bets, but I'm fairly certain we're getting to your favorite bets.
Yeah.
The New England Patriots, 7.5 wins. The over plus 120, plus 800 to win the division, 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. Of the teams in this division, the Patriots have, for lack of a better term, the easiest of the schedules, right? They have an easier schedule, according to Sean Kerner, than the Bills, than the Dolphins and the Jets. They also have the best offensive line in the division, and probably have, other than the Bills, you could argue comparable to the Jets as a defensive line. Simon, fire up, man. I know you got a lot to say here.
Yeah, this is the team. We hated them
This is
last
the
year. I
one.
think we made I think we made fun of them all offseason for thinking that Matt Patricia could run some type of offensive scheme for them. So we just hated the juju going into last season. And, they have arguably the biggest fan base in football, right? I mean, I could not stop hearing from Patriots fans. They're just Tom Brady left the number, right? 20 years of greatness. They're gonna have a huge fan base. So their fans are pissed off. But we looked at the day of the numbers and it just showed that they were gonna have a down year. Now, do we know it was gonna be a season from hell? No, but I think that's a great thing for Mac to build off of. Like Mac, he had such a horrible year last year that everyone's off of him, right? Everyone's completely off this kid who had a great rookie year, had a terrible year last year. Now I think we're getting great value on this team. Like that's why I love the Jets move for as a gambler. The Patriots should probably be plus 600, plus 500 to win this division. We're getting plus 800, plus 850 in a lot of books. It's amazing. Like it's amazing to me the value we're getting on this Patriots team to win this division. Like they are what Belichick wants to be. They are a really good defense with an incredible running attack with a quarterback that just can't screw it up. Like this feels like the early Patriots years with Brady, where it's like, Mac, we're going to need you to make big time throws every now and then, but it's not all going to be on you. Like we have now, they brought in Zeke. They have a two-headed monster there in the running back backfield. They have a great O-line. And the defense every week last year got better. Every week that defense improved. And a lot of those starters are back. So to me, this is all just shaping up to be a team I'll be high on. I know almost every professional I've talked to has a ticket on their over win total. Like everyone's taking the over 7.5. It's going to be one of the most bet win totals just because the professional money is going to come on it. I think the Patriots fan base, which again I just alluded to, is one of the biggest in the world. They're going to be all over this over win total. But to me, the real value is them divisionally. Like the way their schedule shapes up, I'll be able to take a position later in the season. If they're just one or two back of the Bills, I'll be able to take a position on that later in the season because at plus 800, there's so much value on this team for the division. Super Bowl, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I need Mac to get a playoff win before I really start backing him in the playoffs, right? His only ever playoff experience was getting blown out up in Buffalo. Like that's all he has for playoff experience. I need to see more from him before I put Super Bowl future bets on them at 50-1. But we're sitting here at 8-1 for them to win this division on Bet365. I love that number, Chad. So it's definitely going to be a team just like the Rams. Everyone's left for dead, and I'm going to be super high on them divisionally, win total wise. I love everything this team is, which is just that it's that old school early 2000s, late 90s kind of built team. Great defense with a really strong running game with a quarterback like Troy Aikman. Just don't screw it up, Mac. That's all they're asking you to do. Just do not screw up what this team's trying to do. So to me, it's all there for a bounce back season from this Patriots team.
Warren, I'm going to challenge you to give me an AFC East best bet, favorite bet with the same kind of passion and conviction that Simon just gave. If it's not on the Patriots, it'll be on someone else. But first, give me your Patriots take. Are your best bets from any of these Patriots wins, Patriots to win the division, Patriots to win the Super Bowl?
No, they're not. But I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, Simon's sort of trying to convince me a little bit almost. To me, what I value so much is efficiency in football and coaching and play calling and decision making and game planning. It's something that I love focusing in on and attacking it and talking to different guys in the league and out of the league about it. And it just felt last year like Matt Patricia was objectively trying to hold this team back. No idea why. Maybe he just didn't know any better. But there were three key areas that I just could not, that were so confounding. I could not understand how any rational person would do this to their own team if they're trying to win games. The first one is the usage of play action. When this team used play action, they had the NFL's highest improvement using play action versus not using play action. And yet they used it at the third lowest rate in the NFL. This is concerning a little bit this year, but because I'm wondering, does this team even look at this type of data? Or is it because somebody should have been telling Matt Patricia that we need to use play action a little bit more, use it for Mac. It's actually helping a ton. It should have been an analytics group informing him of this information. And I know that their old analytics guru kind of, has distanced himself a little bit from the team, but like this needs to occur this upcoming season. If Bill O'Brien is not capitalizing on certain things, there needs to be assistance there. But Bill O'Brien is definitely not going to make the same mistake. There's no way that they're going to use play action at the rates that they were using last year. That was number one. Number two, the Patriots threw 29% of their passes behind the line of scrimmage, which was the sixth highest. This is on early downs, first three quarters, which is what I try to look at when I'm understanding desire of a play caller. I strip out third down, which is reactionary. I strip out fourth quarter, reactionary. Early downs, first three quarters. One of the highest rates in the NFL of throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And the splits for Mac Jones were night and day difference. Behind the line of scrimmage, 25% success. Beyond the line of scrimmage, 51%. Behind the line of scrimmage, minus 0.23 EPA per attempt. Beyond the line of scrimmage, plus 0.13. I mean, it wasn't even close. And yet, why are they throwing the ball so frequently behind the line of scrimmage? And the third one, this is one of the things that I like to look at a lot is, are you, as an offense, is your philosophy to try to set yourselves up for third and manageable, or is your philosophy to try to bypass third downs by skipping them entirely? Some teams end up having longer third downs, like the Miami Dolphins, because they're so focused on creating big plays that when they do get put into a third down, they have more yards to go. Whereas other teams are trying to set themselves up for third and manageable by just having maybe lower upside but more efficient play calls on those first couple downs so that they can then get a third and manageable. The Patriots were 29th in percentage of early downs that got a first down, so they weren't skipping third down, and they were 30th in distance to go on third down, which tells me this offense was completely rudderless. They had no game plan as to what we're trying to do here. Are we trying to set ourselves up, or are we trying to bypass? I think night and day, we're going to see differences across the board. And so that is something that you would want to buy in on if you're backing the New England Patriots here. My only concern with what Simon said, I don't doubt that there's some talent there defensively, but my only concern is every year when we see Bill Belichick's team, they destroy and massacre the teams that have mediocre to poor offenses. But they've struggled lately with those really good offenses, unlike what they were back in those early 2000s. And if they can't throttle it up defensively a little bit better against some of these great offenses, because they played, like, I think, the sixth most difficult schedule of opposing offenses, this defense isn't going to necessarily do enough. I also worry about like the talent at the receiver position, the separation that they get, definitely a concern for me there. But overall, I do think this is a super low win total. If I'm playing this team, that's probably the direction I'm looking, is I'm be looking at their win total. I don't know what their division wins are in terms of a prop, but that's interesting. If you're a little bit down on the Dolphins and you're a little bit down on the Jets, of just looking at what is New England in terms of division wins, because all these other three teams are sort of buy on in some capacity, maybe not the Bills per se, but they're still like a very popular team. Whereas the Jets, the Patriots have been like written off for dead, of course. So I wonder how many wins, maybe it's 1.5 for their division wins, but that could be interesting as well. But in general, I'd be looking at their win total. I think this team could improve tremendously thanks to a better offensive structure and game plan. I just hope that they're pulling the right levers throughout the course of the season to look at the data and understand what they need to change offensively before it's too late. There's no reason to like wait till a bye week or figure it out after the season's over. You need to be studying all this type of stuff every single week throughout the course of the season and getting it to the staff so they can adjust their play calling.
I've already bet the Pats over 7.5. I haven't bet the division yet, but I will. I know Simon is in love with the 8-1 to win the division. He has gone on the record with his love of the Pats over 7.5. Warren, your best bet from the AFC East, could be anything we talked about or something different.
Yeah, I've got so I've got like 28 different futures right now. Player props, game lines throughout the course of the season, win totals, etc. Ironically enough, I went back and looked through my list of 28. None yet. I have not a single future on the AFC East. I wanted to fade the Bills, but there's no value there. I agree with Simon in that regard. The future that I'm looking to take, I can't tell people to bet it now, but the future I'd be looking to take is I'd be looking to wait until we get right to the start of the season, fade the Jets on their win total, potentially bet against them week 1 against the Buffalo Bills, like kind of package that up together, hit those two, and then come back and bet the over on their win total after they play the Philadelphia Eagles and potentially lose that game in week 6. So I'd be looking to fade the Jets on their win total, but I'd be looking to do that closer to the start of the season once we've reached that crescendo of Aaron Rodgers going in there, playing the preseason game, and the hype of Hard Knocks continuing to carry us over the next couple of weeks.
I don't mind that strategy. Simon and I love playing a get to the breaking point or get into the season and start adjusting on your bets. I can't hate on that.
Well, think about this, Chad. No. If we're talking about rest a lot, and I look at the first 6 weeks, and that game against the Cowboys, they're at a rest disadvantage. They do not have a single rest advantage the first 6 weeks of the season. Immediately after that, though, they have rest advantages in like 5 of their remaining games from week 8 onward. They've got rest advantages in 5 of those games. We already talked about those 4 interesting rest edges that they have against the AFC East, plus the strength of schedule gets a little bit weaker. So down that stretch is where you could buy them. And the other interesting thing down the stretch for a team like the Buffalo Bills, that's a team, obviously, they play up north. They like to host some of their games late in the year to have some of that inclement weather because Josh Allen's got a rocket arm and they can win some of these games. 4 of the Bills' last 6 games are on the road. So they don't get that weather advantage at home in Buffalo. So you can look to back the Jets after their slow start when they've got all these rest advantages and play some easier opponents if you wish.
You mean, Simon, what he's saying is you can play the Jets once the conspiracy theory starts to yield some return.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about. We love playing in-season bets. One of my favorite memories for us was that season, what was it, 2 years ago now, where the Bengals, they were 10-1 to win the division, but they were only a game back of the Ravens. And guess who they're playing that week? They're playing the Ravens. So what'd you mean, Chad, do? We gave out the 10-1, and we gave out the Bengals at plus 6.5 over the Ravens. They ended up beating the Ravens in that game, and it dropped all the way down from 10-1 to 3-1 for them to win that division. So it's one of those where we're just playing the number. Like, do I really think the Patriots are going to win this division? Fuck no. The Patriots have a lot of holes compared to the Bills and Miami, but the value is just there. That's what I'm trying to explain to people. Like 8-1, that's an incredible opportunity to hedge out come late December.
All right, folks. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is proudly presented by Bet365. The world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer. Bet $1 on any game. Get $200 in bonus bets. Must be 21 or older. Offer is available in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. I want to thank Warren Sharp Football Analysis. Go get the book. Listen to his podcast on The Ringer. Go to read Sharp Football Analysis. I want to thank Simon Hunter, my BFF, my co-host, my companion, my compadre. Reminder, like, subscribe, watch on YouTube. Check out the Action Network podcasts for the latest in some more football betting preview content. I am Chad Millman. Download us from Apple Podcasts, from Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Rate, review, subscribe, say whatever you want. Leave 5 stars. Feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.